I'd like to tell you a local story that happened in June 1894 in the small town of Wooster, Ohio. Nestled in the heartland, it's a picturesque slice of America's rural landscape that embodied the essence of a bygone era. A place where the familiar faces of the old pioneer families etched their stories with resilience and determination against a backdrop marked by the cycle of seasons and the tilling of soil. But the 1890s mark a pivotal era for the nation and Wooster. The town finds itself at the intersection of tumultuous forces, the powerful sway of yellow journalism, the iron grip of political control by the established founding families, and the infusion of a diverse immigrant population seeking opportunity and refuge in the new world. Cultural clashes and the tension of class paint a portrait of a town struggling to reconcile the old with the new. It is here where we'll meet newsboy Nate. He's a hustler, always out looking for ways to earn a few extra coins. He's been up before dawn, gathered eggs for his mother, been down to the Bell Brothers stables to dump feed in for the horses, stopped by the Republican newspaper to get his stack of newspapers to deliver, when he spots an opportunity right on Public Square and gleefully takes off at a dead run. When we finally catch up with him, he's at the side of the Republican newspaper editor's house on Lowell Street. He's found a string hanging down from a second-story window and yanks it up and down. As the string is pulled, a small bell is faintly heard jingling in the room above. After a few moments, newsman George Kettler sticks his sleepy head out the window.
Somebody better be dead to get me up this early. What do you got for me?
Yes, Mr. Kettler, I know the rules. Don't pull the string unless somebody died. Well, bloody died. I mean died bloody.
Did somebody bloody die, or not?
I don't know for sure if somebody died, but there's something that looks like a lot of blood going south from Public Square, and Latimer and Leiner are nowhere to be seen downtown.
The fact that the policemen Henry Leiner and James Latimer are not downtown on their regular beat gets Kettler's attention. He tells the boy he'll be down in a minute. Nate goes around to the back of the house and sits down on the stoop outside the back door to wait. Moments later, Kettler opens the door.
Sounds like trouble. Take me to where you saw the blood.
After a short walk, Kettler and Nate are standing over a pool of blood that continues in a spatter and drip trail down the sidewalk.
Here it is. Good enough?
Oh, wow. That is a lot of blood.
Told you.
Okay, you've earned a coin for the tip. Now move on and get the rest of the morning edition delivered on your road.
Sure thing, Mr. Kettler.
Be sure to be back for the evening edition, 'cause it looks like it's going to be big. Oh, and not a word about this to your mother.
She won't hear about a thing from me.
Nate hurries off in the opposite direction, while Kettler follows the blood trail south down Market Street to a small dilapidated three-room house that stands on an alley west of the Catholic schoolhouse. It is the home of 26-year-old George Massoni, his wife Mary Foote-Massoni, and her teenage son Harry Foote, a product of her previous marriage. Kettler approaches the door where he sees another large pool of blood, and the door is open. He carefully steps over the blood and walks in the door where he encounters policemen Henry Leiner and James Latimer.
Apparently, the door is swinging both ways today. Boys, the homicide hound is here.
It's still only assault with a deadly weapon as of yet.
Well, it just turned into homicide. He's breathed his last. Nothing we could do but watch him die.
Perfect timing, as usual, Kettler. Smell of death on the wind, and the newsman is sure to pick it up.
Nothing in the wind, but the large trail of blood going down South Market Street gave this bloodhound something to sniff around about.
Can we have a little respect for the dead?
Who is the dead guy?
Mike the Italian.
Got a last name?
Nah, everybody only knows him as Italian Mike.
How'd he die?
His throat was slashed open ear to ear, nose cut in two, big slice under his arm, and a boatload of other cuts and scratches. Never seen anything like it before.
What my son is trying to say is he likely died from all the wounds inflicted upon him.
Doc, thanks for trying. You all can go on home and try to get some sleep.
Do we know who cut him up?
It's looking like that waster George and Mary. You know the one, a son of notorious Mary Massoni, who keeps that house of joy over on Cabbage Hill in the 5th Ward.
The Cuckoo's Nest?
That's the one.
She does have a knack for creating sensational drama, and it's great print for the paper.
It looks like Georgie is trying to upstage his mother on this one. What a bloody mess.
Where is George Massoni?
Latimer, where is Massoni?
Mary, where did George go?
I have no idea where he's gone. He washed the blood off his hands, got dressed, and left a while ago, soon after Mike jumped out the window.
Come on, Latimer. Let's go try to round him up. He doesn't know Mike died yet.
What about these two?
The Marshal should be on his way as I sent dice to get him up for this one. Kettler, can you stay till the Marshal gets here?
I'm not going anywhere when I can get all the details for the paper right here.
We join Marshal Philip Ellsperman interviewing Mrs. Mary Foote-Massoni, who he arrested and brought to the City Hall basement jailhouse for questioning.
Mary, who cut up Italian Mike.
George, my husband. He had a fight with Mike.
What was the fight about?
I don't rightly know. It all happened so fast.
When and where did this fight take place?
Sometime between midnight and 1 a.m., I reckon. We was woke up by loud banging on our door.
Who do you mean by we?
George, my boy Harry, and me were all stirred up. I went and opened the door to find Wade Naftzger and Mike outside.
What did they want?
From what I could tell, they wanted to come in. Something about a bill. I went and fetched George.
Then what happened?
I went back in the bedroom and George went out and talked to Wade. Would only let Wade in and said the Italian could not enter and shut the door in Mike's face.
How did Mike react to that?
He went around raising a ruckus by rapping on the side of the house and hollering for me. My son Harry was up by now and opened the door and went out.
Did Harry go outside to deal with Mike?
Harry didn't do nothing. He's not been well. A minute or two later, George opened the door and told Harry to get back inside and reminded Mike to stay away.
How did things escalate from there?
Mike came busting in the door, shouting something like, "I'll fix the son of a bitch," and went straight after George. Wade tried to stop him, but he was useless.
What did you do?
I ran out of the room and stood at the door and cried for them to stop, for Mike to come out.
Did you see any weapons?
It all happened so fast. I don't remember seeing no weapons. Just heard the window break and George coming out bloody. Said Mike was gone.
What did George do next?
He washed his face and hands, put on his clothes, and said he was leaving.
Did George say where he was going?
I don't remember if he said anything or not, other than he was leaving. Maybe to his father's place.
So you really don't know what the fight was about? Mary, any chance all this is connected to your work as a night flower? Or is there more to this story you're not telling me?
There's nothing more to it. I'm not doing that type of work anymore. I'm married now.
The thought never crossed your mind that they were likely fighting over you?
Over me? Can't see why that would be.
Really, Mary? Did you forget that fight a few weeks ago where George hit Mike over the head with a hammer because he found Mike with you in his bedroom?
As far as I know, that was all settled. Just a mix-up where George mistook the situation and hit Mike.
Well, since you're unable or unwilling to tell the truth, you're in for a weekend stay down below in a cell while we sort this all out.
Jail? But I've done nothing wrong. I've told you the truth.
That's for the mayor to decide.
After placing Mary Massoni in a cell at the jailhouse, Marshal Ellsperman sits down with her son, 15-year-old Harry Foote.
Harry, thanks for coming in. Tell me what happened last night.
Not like I had much of a choice getting a personal wake-up call and escort from Officer Latimer. How's me mom?
She's fine. Don't you worry about her. Tell me what happened.
We was all in bed sleeping when somebody started pounding on the door.
Did you get up?
Nah, George went to see what all the fuss was about. He let Naftzger in. Then I heard Mike tapping at my window and calling for me.
How'd you know it was Mike?
I knew it was him. Know his voice. He boarded with us over at the old home for several weeks, until George told him to get out and we moved here.
What did you do when you heard him calling?
First, I ignored him, tried to go back to sleep and laid there for another 20 minutes or so. Heard nothing else from him.
Your mother stated that Mike was calling for her.
He was corked. Sounded like Harry to me, but could have been Mary or Harry?
Why did you go outside the house?
Couldn't get back to sleep. Had to piss. So I got up and went outside.
When you went outside, what did you see?
While taking a piss, didn't see Mike at first. After I finished, that's when I saw him standing at the corner of the house. He came over to me, smelled like a brewery. I asked him what he wanted. Said he wanted in the house. Told me that there were 2 more guys in the lot next door.
Did you see anyone else?
Didn't see nobody.
Did you let Mike in the house?
No. Just when I seen he had a knife in his hand, George opened the door and told me to get in the house and for Mike to shove off.
How did Mike react to that?
That made Mike boil over and he rammed through the door and made a run after George, who fled to the bedroom trying to get away from him.
Then what happened?
After Mike was in the house, I looked in and saw Naftzger grab Mike, but Mike shook him off and went in the bedroom after George. Didn't see nothing after that, only heard scuffling.
So it was Mike's knife. How did George get the knife?
Don't know that he did. They sounded like a couple of mad cats going at it. I stayed outside. I was scared about the knife. Stayed on the porch out of the way until I seen Mike come through the window head first.
Then, what did you do?
That scared the shite out of me. Just stood there like a statue. He lit on his hands and then came up onto the porch for a minute. I didn't say nothing to him, too scared, and he just looked at me, didn't say nothing.
What condition was he in at that point? Dying?
He wasn't dying, just acted kind of wild, like trembling all over. It was dark, all I could see was some blood coming down his face and seen it was cut up, but not bleeding as much as when he came back later from town.
Did you try to help him? Did he ask for help?
Couldn't do anything. Seemed like my feet was frozen in place. Then he staggers over to the street and went off in a big hustle. When he turned the corner and I felt safe again, I followed him. Once he went by Overdusky's stable, I turned around and went home. Didn't think he'd come back.
Who was there when you went back to the house?
Me, Mom. Mr. Naftzger and George were there.
Did they say anything?
Heard George say his hand was cut. Something about him going uptown. Didn't really pay much attention. I just wanted to go back to bed. Have not felt well for a month, wanted to sleep.
What did Wade Naftzger do during all this?
Wade was totally tankered. He left. I think he followed George out. I tried to go back to bed, but not too long later, Mike was back with Latimer and Leiner. They brought him in and laid him on the kitchen floor. He was bleeding pretty freely now.
Was your mother in the room?
I don't remember whether she was there or not. Probably. Policeman asked me to go get the doctor.
Did you get the doctor?
Yeah, well no, I tried to get Dr. Lurch, who lives in the neighborhood, but he wouldn't come. So went back to the house and told them he wasn't coming. Then they left to go get help. Me and Mom were left with Mike. He didn't look so good.
Did Mike say anything?
Nothing that made any sense.
Did your mother say anything?
Not a word.
Then what happened next?
Latimer and Leiner came back with 2 doctors. They worked on Mike for a while, but he died. Then that reporter came, and a little later you came and took me Mom away.
That's all I need from you, Harry. Go on home. Somebody probably be around to summon you to court to testify.
When can me Mom come home? She didn't do nothing.
I've charged her along with George for second-degree murder for causing the death of Italian Mike. Do you got any money for her bail?
Not a penny.
Then she won't be home anytime soon. Go on home.
But she didn't do it. Really didn't do nothing. That's not fair.
Life's not fair, kid.
On the sidewalk outside the Naftzger home on Pittsburgh Avenue, Marshal Philip Ellsperman and newsman George Kettler meet. Both head for the front door wanting to interview Albert Wade Naftzger about the alleged murder. Ellsperman gets to the door first.
Kettler, I'm going to let you tag along so the good people of the city get the news that they're safe from crime. I'm on the job, but keep your mouth shut and stay out of my way. Oh, don't worry, Chief. I'll make sure you and the mayor get your names front and center in the paper. Sorry to bother you, ma'am, but is Wade around? I need to talk to him.
Yes, please come in. He's in the parlor.
Morning, Wade. You know Kettler, here from the newspaper. Are you up to answering some questions about what happened last night?
I'll try, but it's still all a bit fuzzy.
Fuzzy? Wade, I thought that was your hair, every morning. Try to tell me what you do remember. What were you doing yesterday?
We started drinking early that day.
Early? You mean like breakfast?
Not quite, Sam. Me and Mike and a few of the workers started drinking at my father's mill early, waiting for the saloons to open up. Sounds like a family tradition. What? Nothing. Go on, Wade. Later, me and Mike went to Charlie Shook's place about 9 p.m. to get something to eat and drink a few more glasses of beer. So, you started drinking at the mill, then went to the saloons in the late afternoon, and ended up at Shook's around 9 p.m. Well, you know, it was a special occasion.
Yeah, right. It was Saturday, huh?
Then Mike said he was going over to Rich's pool hall. I said I'd join him after I finished my beer. I sat in Rich's for some time watching them play pool when Mike asked me to go along over to George and Massoni's. I hope they play pool better than they make decisions. Said he wanted to see George to settle some old accounts. That's how we ended up there. We were very drunk by the time we reached the house.
Mrs. Massoni says you went there to collect a bill.
That's not true. I went because Mike wanted to go there. It's true earlier in the week, Massonis wanted some cornflour and me to trust them on paying later.
Trust in cornflour sounds like a recipe for trouble.
When I got there last night, Mike asked me why I didn't do it. I said the flour belonged to my father and that I had no right to trust. Mike laughed at the idea of me being able to collect anything from them anyhow.
So you only went there because Mike asked you to go? The Massonis didn't owe you any money?
Yeah, well no, I really don't know. My head is killing me. I don't remember much, only that there was a bit of a scuffle. What did happen last night?
I'll tell you what happened. You've brought disgrace to yourself and your family through your drinking. Let this be a lesson. You should make a vow here and now never to touch, taste, or handle intoxicants ever again, for the sake of your family.
Philip's got a point, Wade. Maybe it's time to switch to tea.
Wade, this is serious. Italian Mike is dead.
Oh, geez. I promise I have drank for the last time.
That's all well and good, but what do you remember about last night?
I kinda remember George let me in, but stated he did not want that damn black Italian in the house. I felt awful. The room was spinning. I just needed to rest for a minute, so I took off my coat, used it as a pillow, and laid down on the floor.
Got the head spins, eh?
Next thing I know, Mike was in the house.
Sounds like Mike was quite the party crasher.
I got up to catch Mike and hold him away from George.
Oh my, what was going on, Wade?
As I took a hold of him, he said, "I'll fix him."
Fix him how?
He broke away from me as I was too drunk to stop him.
I think they call that liquid courage.
He ran into the bedroom after George.
Did you follow them?
Mrs. Massoni came running out.
Mrs. Massoni got out, you say?
Yeah, and the bedroom door got slammed shut as the men grabbed at each other. After that, all I heard was tussling.
Got it. Scuffling and tussling.
Saw nothing more of Mike.
Where did he go?
Last I heard was the breaking of glass.
Do you remember Italian Mike having a knife when he came in the house? Kettler, I'm asking the questions here. Wade, answer the question.
Yeah, that's right. When he came in, he had a knife in his hand. That's why I tried to stop him.
How long were they in the other room fighting? Kettler, really? Well, go on, Wade.
It couldn't have been more than 5 minutes before I heard the crash of glass and George came back to the kitchen, his hand all bloody, saying his hand got hurt. Told us Mike jumped out the window. I asked where Mike was, and he said gone.
Did he have the knife in his hand?
I couldn't make out what was in his hand. I just saw a lot of blood.
Then what did you do?
I went outside to look for Mike, called for him several times, but he was gone. So I made my way to my father's mill, where I slept until daylight before coming home. I didn't know Mike was hurt bad.
Did you see anybody else on your way to the mill?
Not that I remember, but honestly, my recollection is hazy. I just remember waking up at the mill.
Okay, thanks, Wade. The lawyers will probably be in touch with you soon. You might want to get one yourself.
Lawyers?
Oh God, Wade, we can't afford that. What will the people at the church think of all this?
Told you this was serious, Wade. We've got the Massonis in lockup for murder. There will be an arraignment and likely a trial. You'll have to testify.
Oh lordy, my father's going to take me to the shed for this. Kettler, can't you do anything? Make it not sound so bad in the paper.
I'll do what I can, mate. Paper doesn't want to lose your father's advertising business over this. Come on, time to go, Kettler. You're not going to ask any more questions here.
Newsman Kettler finds officers Leiner and Latimer in their office at City Hall Police Headquarters to try to get their statements about the events that happened the night before. He offered to get them a cup of coffee.
Don't think a cup of coffee is going to make us chums.
Ah, come on. I'll even put a little sugar in it to sweeten you up a little.
Sweet is not a word people use to describe me.
I don't know about him, but I could use something warm in my belly after last night's adventure. Speaking of which, when did you guys first see Italian Mike Saturday night?
I knew it. You were only here to get the scoop for the newspaper, not to be nice and get us some coffee after a long night.
Nice is not a word people use for me. And yes, I'd like to hear your account on the record. So when did you first see Mike Saturday night?
Just tell him what he wants to know. He won't leave till he gets the story, and I want to clock out.
In front of Quinby and Klein's store a little before 1 a.m., me and Latimer were standing around talking with Arch Dice, the merchant policeman, when Mike came up to us.
His hands, face, and clothes were covered in blood. He was a ghastly sight.
We could see there was something wrong with him as his nose was about split in two and blood was gushing from a big gash on his throat.
But what really struck me was the hate in his eyes, like the devil coming for you straight out of hell.
We tried to ask him questions, but he really could not talk so as we could understand him.
All we could get was the word Wade. We sent dice to notify Marshal Ellsperman, then asked Mike if he wanted to go see a doctor.
Mike motioned for us to follow him, and he started walking really fast. So fast we had to trot now and then to keep up.
His blood was flowing freely, but he took us almost all the way to Massoni's door before he staggered and collapsed. I caught him and held him up.
The door was locked, so I ran around the back and got in by the other door. Then unlocked the kitchen door, and me and Latimer brought Mike in and laid him down on the floor.
Anybody in the house when you got there?
Only Mrs. Massoni and her son.
Then what happened?
We sent the kid to get Doc Lurch, asked Mrs. Massoni, who had cut up Italian Mike so bad.
She said her husband, George, that she found a knife which she gave to me and I put in my pocket.
We asked her where George was. She said she didn't know.
Boy came back and said Dr. Lurch couldn't come, so we left to go get help.
Saw Dice again on our way uptown and told him to tell the marshal to get to the Massoni house down by the Catholic church.
We went back uptown and got the doctor's Barrett to come with us to help Mike.
After Mike died, we went to find and arrest George Massoni. Looked everywhere for him we could think of in town. Couldn't find him.
Then we went over to his father's place, Yank Massoni's on Cabbage Hill. Sure enough, that's where we found him.
He didn't put up any struggle during the arrest. Came along all peaceful like.
Did he say anything?
Can you believe this? He asked how Mike was. Said he thought the time he hit him with the hammer would have been enough for Mike to learn to stay away. Said he'd fix the Dago right if he comes back again.
Guess Georgie'd been here so long he don't see himself as Italian anymore. Anyhow, we didn't tell him Mike had died when we arrested him. Just told him that it seemed like he fixed him up pretty good already.
That's right. He didn't find out until we had him all locked up in jail and Marshal Ellsperman came in to question him. Well, you know, you were there when the Marshal questioned George.
Kettler scribbles a quick description of George Massoni as being born in Wooster, but not very generally known. His father is Italian, but mother Anglo. He notes George bears very little resemblance to the ordinary swarthy Italian and is not a very desperate-looking fellow.
George, you're lucky a first-class attorney like John C. Moore has opted to take your case and represent you in court.
Had to take the case. The Wayne County Bar won't stand for this type of manipulation of the law, Marshal. This is a ridiculous political stunt by you and the mayor. Your attack dogs should have never arrested or charged Mr. Massoni.
The mayor appointed us to clean out the criminals in this town, and that's what we're doing. We followed the law.
Mr. Massoni, I'm here to help you while the marshal takes your official statement as to what happened the night of the fight. Try to answer his questions honestly and the best you can remember. Why is he here?
He's from the newspaper. He just wants to get your side of the story. That's right, I'm just here to get your story right. Tell the people who you are and what happened. Can you tell me how old you are, if you're married, and where you work?
Kettler, I'll be asking the questions here.
George, go ahead and answer Mr. Kettler's questions, if you like.
I'm 26 years old. I got married by Reverend Kemmerer about 2 years ago. I am a day laborer, work at anything I can get.
A Catholic Italian married by a German Reformed Reverend to a divorcee. Now I've heard it all. What were you doing last Friday?
He was the only one who would marry us. I was hired to chop wood near the brewery all day.
What time did you get home?
Got home about 8 o'clock, had something to eat, and went to bed about 10:30. Sometime later my wife woke me up. Said someone was at the door.
Did you get up?
No. Well, yeah. My wife went to see who it was. Came back, told me it was Wade Naftzger. I went out to see what Wade wanted.
Who let Wade in?
My wife opened the door, but I let him in. Wade told me Mike was outside. I told Wade he could come in, but Mike had to stay out. Closed the door after Wade came in.
What did you and Wade talk about?
He made no sense, was really pickled. Gave me a drink from a half-pint bottle he had with him. Then said he didn't feel so good and needed to lay down for a minute, which he did. I went back to my bedroom.
Then what happened?
I heard Harry get up and go outside. After a bit, I went and opened the door to tell Harry to hurry up and get back in the house, and that's when I saw Mike talking to Harry. So I said, "Mike, I have told you I don't want you around here," and started to shut the door when Mike came busting in and started striking at me with a knife and cut my nightshirt.
What did you do?
Wasn't much I could do.
barefoot and dressed in nothing but my nightshirt. I ran into my bedroom while Wade tried to pull Mike away, but Mike followed me into the bedroom. My wife screamed and ran out of the room, and I jumped on the bed. All this time, Mike kept striking at me with his knife. I grabbed a picture frame off the wall to block the knife. He cut my nightshirt a few more times, and after the frame broke, I jumped off the bed and grabbed my razor lying on the stand.
Did you cut Mike with the knife or the razor?
Done it with the razor. I never got the knife from him.
Once you had the razor, how many times did you cut Mike?
First cut I gave him was the one on his neck. Didn't faze him. He comes back at me several times with the knife, and I cut him under the arm. Don't know when I might have cut him on the nose or head. I was just swinging the razor to keep him away from me. Eventually he went down on his knees, dropped the knife on the floor, and then all of a sudden got up and jumped out the window.
So you never took the knife from him?
No, he had the knife the whole time till he dropped it right before going out the window. I protected myself with the razor.
After Mike left through the window, what did you do?
I didn't think Mike was hurt bad. I got dressed and went to the kitchen, washed my hands, and told the old woman I was leaving.
Leaving to go where?
I went out through the bottoms to the brewery and waited in their barn for my brother Joe to come to work. When he was working at his boiling kettle, I told him I had a fight with Mike. He told me to go to the old home, wash up, and go right to the mayor's office. That's what I was going to do, but Latimer and Leiner showed up at my father's place before I had a chance to get to the mayor's.
What did you do with the razor? We didn't find it at the house.
On the way to the brewery, I stashed it under the corner of the coal house.
Why? Were you trying to hide it?
No, I forgot I still had it in my hand when I left the house, and just wanted a place to put it down.
So the razor will still be there in the coal shed if I send the boys to go get it?
Should be. Didn't tell nobody else it was there.
Did you hold a grudge against Mike from the time a few weeks ago when you caught him in your bedroom with your wife?
No grudge. I thought hitting him over the head with the hammer was enough for that at the time.
You did not go outside to confront Mike and get revenge?
No. I only opened the door to get Harry to come back in. He's been sick. I never went outside.
Did you want to kill Mike?
No. I did not mean for him to die. Slashed him to save meself, my own life.
Did you go into the bedroom to get the razor to hurt Mike?
No. Went in there just to get away from him, forgot it was there until I seen it. First I tried to use the picture frame to protect myself and bust him over the head, but it broke, and that's when I saw the razor and grabbed it off the stand.
If you were only protecting yourself, why did you run away afterwards?
I was scared. I didn't know what to do. Thought Joe would know.
That's the end of the official interview. Kettler, you got any questions for the prisoner?
Mr. Massoni, you don't have to answer any of Mr. Kettler's questions if you don't want to. I don't have nothing to hide.
Did you know about your wife's past?
I knew she had been married and divorced from Fred Foote before marrying me.
I mean, that she was a prostitute before you married her?
I knew she was a prostitute. She worked for my mother while I was living there.
When you found Italian Mike in your bedroom with your wife a few weeks ago, did you suspect that your wife may still have been carrying on, in that line of business?
I never doubted her until this all happened.
Did you suspect that Wade and Italian Mike came to your house to do, business with your wife as payment for an outstanding bill?
No, there was no bill that I know about. I'm done answering your questions. She is my wife, so don't you talk bad about her. We've done nothing wrong.
My client is done answering any more questions.
Marshal Ellsperman asked Dr. Joseph Barrett to meet him at City Hall Police Headquarters to take the doctor's statement about the incident at the Massoni house.
Thanks for coming in, Dr. Barrett. I just need to ask you a few routine questions about last night.
That was a bloody mess. Haven't seen that much carnage since the war. The good people need to feel safe and the lesser classes need to know their place. Dragging the Naftzger boy down to their level. You need to put a stop to that sort of thing.
Don't worry. Me and the boys are working on it. About when did you get called out?
I was called to see a man about 2 o'clock in the morning. Took my son Edward with me as he's studying to be a doctor. The policeman showed us to the house.
Who all was there when you got to the Massoni house?
The man was lying on the floor, and the only other person I saw was the lady, Mrs. Massoni.
Did she say anything to you?
She just pointed and said, "That man needs help."
What condition was the man in?
Not good and suffering greatly. He was lying face down.
What did you do?
Me and my son, attempted to get him on his back, but he would groan and go back the other way. It took some time working with him before we could get him to roll over so we could dress his wounds.
What exactly were his wounds?
The one on his throat was the worst. The cut had almost severed his windpipe and ran down across his breast. There was another under his left arm about 9 inches long. His nose was cut in two and down across his left cheek. Then there was one long cut on the back of his head and a smaller one on his left hip. There was also a bunch of small cuts and scratches on his head and upper body.
What killed him?
Hard to say for sure. He had no pulse at the wrist when we got there, and none at any time we were working on him, but he was still breathing. He even managed to almost get up one time. He bled very freely, and with the amount of blood he lost, I was amazed he lived as long as he did.
So, what killed him?
First, I thought he must have had some other condition which caused his death, as he rallied a bit after we closed up the worst of his wounds. But with no other medical evidence, I'd have to say he probably died from the loss of blood.
Did he ever say anything to you? Tell you who cut him up?
We, meaning me and the policeman, asked him a number of times who did it. And all he kept saying was, "Me die," repeatedly.
Nothing else?
Before we carried him into the bedroom, he said, "They all killed me. Once or twice," he said Wade. Then would say, "Kill me, George." Then George, all of them. But mainly he spoke of dying. Me die, me die.
About when did he finally die?
Time of death was around 5:15 in the morning. That's when he stopped breathing.
Okay, thanks, Doc. That's all I need. Don't think I need to talk to your son, as I know he's busy with his medical school studies.
Mayor Lemuel Jeffries sees newsman George Kettler in the City Hall lobby and marches over to chat.
What do you think, Kettler? This Italian murder pretty big news?
Circulation is up. Even heard the Henry County newspaper is going to run the story.
Great! I want the people to know that I am tough on crime. I appointed Ellsperman, Leiner, and Latimer as my police force to stamp out the criminals.
Looks like they're doing a bang-up job of it. The city jail's already bursting at the seams.
We keep them moving. You'll see my court is swift and fair. We investigate, question witnesses, examine the evidence, and arrest those responsible, then have them ready for arraignment.
No denying this one was put up fast, all in the course of a day. With all due respect, it seems like a pretty clear-cut case of self-defense to me, sir.
But that dang Massoni family is nothing but trouble for this town. His drunkard mother running that whorehouse on Cabbage Hill, his simpleton sister begging on the corner downtown, and his so-called wife, a known pickpocket and prostitute.
That may all be true, sir, but you can't convict a man for simply being related to criminals. Facts are he was in his house, minding his own business, when somebody broke in uninvited and tried to stab him with a knife. A man's allowed to defend himself in his own home, right?
Well, if you're going to put it like that, we'll at least have to have some sort of a show of justice.
Begging your pardon, sirs, but me and Latimer just got back from Italian Mike's room over Rich's saloon.
What were you doing over there?
We suspected Mike with having had a hand in some recent burglaries, so for the purpose of looking for stolen property, thought it our duty to search his room.
Did you find anything?
Nothing of any value was found. He must have already moved the stuff, but in a small memorandum book, we did find 2 notes written to him by Mrs. Massoni. In one she said that she would meet him at Rich's. In the other she asks him to come down and tells him about his washing.
So you didn't find any stolen property, or anything we can stick Mrs. Massoni for either?
No, sir.
Great! I got a bloody mess to clean up and nobody is even going to hang for it.
One more slight issue, sir. We sent the Italian's body over to Lehman and Geitke's undertaking rooms, and Coroner Huntsberger has been over from Orville and has about finished looking over the body. Lehman wants to know what he's supposed to do with it, the body, when the coroner's done looking at it.
Does he have any family we can notify? Anybody to take it off our hands?
Coroner couldn't find anybody that knows his real name. Everyone only knew him as Italian Mike. Me and Latimer asked at least a dozen people over in the 5th Ward to give his full God-given name, and only one person said maybe it was Michael Roso or Roso, but was not sure about that.
The city's not paying to bury him. Make sure the Wooster Township trustees get stuck with the expense of burying him in Pauper's Field at Wooster Cemetery. Tell Layman to go ahead and fit him up for burial. Do it as soon as possible. I want this all cleaned up and buried as fast as they can. Gonna show we practice swift justice around here.
Will do. I'll let the trustees know they're going to be getting a bill. Maybe somebody will come forward with his name after looking at the remains. Layman says hundreds of people have come in to look at the body.
Hundreds of people?
The Democrat newspaper said it was at least 1,000 people so far. Hope there's no offense for reading the competition, Kettler.
Sounds like my office is going to be way too small for the preliminary trial for all the people that are going to want to come and see the show. I mean trial. Get over to the Opera House and make sure we can open it for a trial on Monday.
Yes, sir.
In the Worcester City Hall Opera House, Mayor Jeffries, the prisoners, witnesses and attorneys already occupy seats on the stage. Newsman George Kettler is sitting in the center front row of the audience, notepad in hand.
Sir, I don't think any more people are coming. Should I get things started?
There's hardly anybody here. How many do you think there are?
I don't know. Not like we were selling tickets. I had guessed 200 or so.
I thought we were going to get a full house. This is disappointing. Damn Massonis! Let's get this show over with.
All rise. In the presence of the flag of our country, emblem of our Constitution, and remembering the principles for which they stand, the Mayor's Court in the city of Wooster, within the great state of Ohio, is now in session with the Honorable Mayor Lemuel Jeffries presiding. Please be seated.
At the Worcester Republican newspaper office, George Kettler is sitting writing furiously at his desk when a press room man gently knocks and enters the door.
Mr. Kettler, we're going to need those pages if you want to get them typeset in time for this evening's edition.
Right. Just a few more words, and it's all yours.
Did they pin the murder on the poor man?
Not this time. Everybody could see it was a clear case of self-defense. And before Jeffries went on stage, members of the Wayne County Bar clearly reminded the mayor he had to follow the law.
Betty didn't like that.
He took it on the chin, but everybody gave him his time on stage and let him decree that he heard all the evidence offered on both sides, that in his vast experience he did not need to review it, and immediately declared it was a case of self-defense and that no grand jury or petit jury would ever indict George or Mary Massoni. He declared Mr. and Mrs. Massoni discharged from custody and free to go home, not enough evidence to convict them.
Is it true nobody went to the Italian's burial?
Sadly, yes. After getting word from the mayor, Layman closed the public viewing, put the body in a cheap coffin, loaded it up on Will Bevington's wagon, and drove out to Wooster Cemetery. Sexton Forney already had a spot open in Potter's Field. I was there to see who might show up, but nobody came. They just lowered the coffin into the ground and covered him over. Not a prayer was offered, a song sang, or a word said.
That's plain sad. Boys in the press room said some of the Italian's countrymen were very upset that he was interred in a Protestant cemetery.
Since none of them came forward or interested themselves in his arrangements, they have no cause to complain.
Well, the boys went on to say Andrew Massaro, the fruit dealer, knew the man's correct name and his Italian home.
What'd he say it was?
Not sure if I can pronounce it right, but said it was Nicolo Auzino di Rocca of Romana, Provincia Caserta.
Let me write that down. That's a great ending for my story. And with that addition, these pages are now ready for the typesetter.